Okay, so if you were doing this by hand, my dogs have distracted me. If you were doing this by hand, you would still calculate, you would end up with this answer, but remember that was the very first thing that we found. We found this by using StatCrunch. If we were doing this by hand, we would start right here. This would be the first thing that we would find. We would do 1 minus the confidence interval and divide it by 2, and that would give us this area right here to look up. We would look up that area, and that would give us this z-score. Then once we get that z-score, we would then use that z-score and this formula right here to calculate our margin of error. So the z-score is just the z-score times, remember, this is the z-score. They called it the, what did they call it on this other page? They called it the critical value. Okay. So we calculate the critical value first. We find the critical value. Then we use that critical value. And what are we calculating right here? Do you remember what this is from the last lesson? Oh, my dogs are playing. This thing right here, what we're doing is we're calculating S. This is the standard deviation of the sample. That's what we're calculating. So to find our margin of error, the margin of error, to find the margin of error, you take your critical value, and that's based on your confidence interval. You take your critical value and you multiply it times the standard deviation for the sample. This was not given. We have to calculate that, and we calculate that by doing this right here. So for this calculation, for our margin of error, we would take the 1.96, which is what we found below. We take the 1.96. I'll just do it down here. I don't remember what it was. We take the 1.96, and the standard deviation of the population was 21.2. So we take the 1.96 and we multiply it times the 21.2 divided by the square root of the sample size. Okay, so you do that, and you just do that on a plain old calculator. You do 1.96. Does this thing have parentheses? It doesn't. Times, ooh, I really want to use my other calculator. Okay, I'm going to use the 84 because it will not bother my high school students as much for me to change calculators as it will the other ones. So we'll use this one just because I don't want to have to deal with parentheses and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be easier to type it in. So I'm going to type in 1.96 times, and then the parentheses 21.2 divided by, oh, we could get a fraction bar. 1.96 times the fraction bar, and then do 21.2 over the square root of 1,000. Hold on, I gotta yell at my dog. Stop it! You're tearing something up. Close the parentheses and press enter. And what did we get? 1.31. Aren't y'all excited? Because what did we say that it was a while ago? We said it was 1.3. So we calculated it the same way by using the margin of error. we just took the margin of error is the z-score 1.96, and we calculated the the population standard deviation divided by the sample size to get the standard deviation of the sample. And that came out to be 1.3, which was exactly what we already knew because we used StatCrunch to get the interval. Okay, and so now we take the mean, we do what this right here says. We take this mean, 131.4, and we add the 1.3, and we take the 131.4 and we subtract the 1.3, and what two numbers do we get? But 132.7 and 130.1. We got the exact same answers that we would get right here. So if you're doing it by hand, this is the first thing you have to calculate. This is the second thing. You've got to find this off your table. You find this on your table. This is the third thing. You have to find the margin of error. And then the fourth thing is to find your upper limit and your lower limit. Okay. So I'm going to stop the tape because I've shown you how to do it. No, that's not going to be the only example that I work. That would just be mean. So I'm going to go over here and work this example, and I might even find another one because if I remember, yeah, this has a 90%, and I want to work one where you have to be sure that you calculate your critical value instead of just being able to use this, because y'all get lazy about using this and then you don't know how to find your critical values. So I want to be sure and go back and do a couple of examples of critical values. And then there's this one last thing. So we're looking at probably at least 2 more videos, maybe even 3. I don't know why. This is like the most missed question on the test. And it's a formula. It's right there. It's simple. But anyway, we'll come back. Check the next video.